Okay, well, good morning and welcome everybody to our third and final Focus City webinar of the year. My name is Alma Leiva and I'm going to be your host for today. I'm with California Walks. Just to let you know a little bit about California Walks, we are the statewide voice for pedestrian safety and healthy and walkable communities for people of all ages and abilities. We provide technical assistance to communities to create more walkable communities, and we also work at the state level to advance opportunities for active transportation. We are partners with UC Berkeley SafeTrek for our Focus Cities efforts. For folks not familiar with SafeTrek, it stands for Safe Transportation Research and Education Center. They are a University of California Berkeley Research Center affiliated with the Institute of Transportation Studies and the School of Public Health. Their mission is to reduce transportation-related injuries and fatalities through research, education, outreach, and community service. SafeTrek conducts research, provides technical assistance and workshops to communities across California, educates transportation safety professionals of tomorrow, and coordinates major transportation safety programs for the state of California. We would also like to acknowledge the support of the California Office of Traffic Safety, who provided a grant through the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration for this program. We appreciate their dedicated support of community pedestrian and bicycle safety. So before we dive in, a couple of housekeeping reminders. Please be sure to mute your audio. We will be recording both the webinar and the chat features, and we will make sure that the recording is available afterwards. If you do not want to be recorded, please refrain from talking or using the chat feature. If you have questions throughout the webinar, please type them in the chat box on your screen, and we'll answer as many as we can at the end of the presentation. So we encourage y'all to ask questions and to really make use of the feature. We want to make this a really good dialogue between the panelists and yourselves. So thank you for being on with us today. So with that, I'm really excited to introduce our first panelist, Jessie Mintzbroth. Jessie is the Vision Zero manager at the San Jose Department of Transportation. Vision Zero is the city's initiative to reduce traffic fatalities and injuries. In this role, he oversees crash data analysis, traffic safety education, safe routes to school, running the city's new Vision Zero task force, and state level policy work with other California cities. Before moving to California from New York City in 2018, Jessie worked for 2 years as the senior advisor for transportation improvements at the New York City Department of City Planning, working on major capital transportation improvements in neighborhoods undergoing rezoning to increase affordable housing, and for 7 years at the New York City Department of Transportation, where he was a senior project manager working on Vision Zero street redesign projects citywide. So very excited to have Jessie here, and I'll hand it over to you, Jessie. Thank you for being here.
Thanks, and hi to everyone. So I'm going to focus, I think, mostly on data, but also on our action plan. So you can see images of San Jose and also our action plan, which was the most recent one was passed in February 2020, right before the pandemic started. Next slide, please. So I wanted to do an intro slide in case not everyone is familiar with San Jose, but it is the most populous city in Northern California. And I should add, you might be wondering why I moved from New York City to the Bay Area. And it is because I'm originally from here. I just haven't lived here in about 20 years. I grew up in the East Bay. But one of the things that's changed since I was a kid is that San Jose has become the most populous city in Northern California. And I believe that change happened in the 90s. It's also the biggest city in what people think of as Silicon Valley. And you know, size-wise is maybe 3 times or more physically larger than San Francisco. It's on Ohlone land, as is most of the Bay Area, and specifically the tribe Tamian, which as a transportation planner, I think is neat to see memorialized in a train station name directly south of downtown. It's one of the oldest cities from the Spanish period in California, started in 1777, and in the US period, which was after the Mexican-American War, when the state became, I believe, the state became a state in 1849. So it was the first capital of California at that time. It's really well known for being a large suburban city that sort of expanded and with a lot of annexation in the 1950s and 80s. And in that period, cities were developing as very car oriented. And so a lot of the streets here look like that, and those are the ones that a lot of the Vision Zero work are focused on, are those wide arterials. But the center of town is an older gridded downtown, like many other cities that were developed around streetcars. In terms of the 2020 census, to give a demographic picture, it's 38% Asian, 31% Hispanic, and 23% white. And an interesting thing that really stood out to me since I've moved here is that it has the largest population of Vietnamese descent in a US city of over 100,000 people. So next slide. San Jose is one of 50 cities now that have adopted Vision Zero policies, basically, which are to reduce traffic fatalities and injuries on the street network. And you can see how they cluster on this map, which is maintained by the Vision Zero network. And so there are a lot of other cities that are also Vision Zero cities on the West Coast, including Los Angeles, which we'll be talking later. Next slide. So the context of adopting Vision Zero policies in the US has a lot to do with this graph, which is US pedestrian fatalities. Notably that they were falling until 2009, and then in 2009, this uptick, which is really dramatic, started. And a lot of cities that adopted Vision Zero began doing so in about 2014. And so San Jose was one of the cities immediately after that adopted in 2015. But I think, like, anyone looking on this slide on screen might wonder what happened in 2009. And so the number one theory of what happened in 2009 is smartphones. So what people think of as distraction these days. And it really affects all road users. It's not to blame one road user over another, but the way that smartphones have been integrated into everything, whether it's a car console these days or just they're everywhere. So that's the biggest thing that changed in 2009. The other thing that's theorized is about SUV consumption in the US, that SUVs are, they hit a pedestrian higher, they are heavier, and also that their engines are bigger, which is something that is not totally necessary either, because apparently engines had become a lot more efficient before then. So that's sort of about what the market wants to buy. And some of those things are in a book that you could read that came out last year called Right of Way by Island Press. I believe the author is Angie Schmidt. So next slide. So this is the numbers for San Jose, and you can see basically that San Jose's traffic fatalities doubled in the last 10 years. And if you need a barometer for what does another city that you might be familiar with look like, San Francisco has about 30 fatalities per year, and their population is 885,000. So they're about 100,000 people fewer, with in some years about half the number of fatalities. So in San Jose, the peak years have been 2015 and 2019. And you can see that we were interested to see that the numbers had gone down a lot in the COVID year. Although at the time that we reported these data, we didn't know if this would hold as a trend or whether it was an aberration. So next slide. The biggest thing to see in our 5 years of data is that the biggest group of traffic fatalities is people hit while walking. And they are tied or leading in 4 of the 5 years shown here. Motor vehicle occupants, who are the majority of our mode share, are holding steady at number 2. I mean, still a large group. Cyclists, who is much smaller mode share, and motorcyclists, also much smaller mode share, make up a lower number, but those numbers are really, well, they're smaller, but we pay a lot of attention, particularly to the vulnerable users, such as cyclists, who we think about the infrastructure we build for them similar in some ways to pedestrian infrastructure. Next slide. Looking at median ages is also really interesting because we see that for our biggest group, which is people hit while walking, they're also the median oldest group. And so that really helps us understand that we should focus our safety education work a lot more on older adults, where a lot of the work in the past in that field really comes from working with children. So we continue to do that, but we're also trying to expand to an audience of adults in general and older adults where possible. So you can also see that it's a high-ish age for cyclists, but also that is a more volatile number because the number of data each of those years is lower. Next slide. So we have been looking at the factors that are most leading to fatal and severe injuries, and KSI stands for fatal and severe injuries. So if you look, for example, at the top known factors leading to fatal and severe injuries on the left, number 1 is speeding and number 2 is red light running, but number 1 is far ahead of number 2. And so speeding is really the focus area that's emerging for us. And you can see, particularly in the pandemic, if you compare, I mentioned that one of our high data years was 2019. In that year, we had 6 people in fatalities where the cause was speeding, but in 2020, it's more than doubled to 13 last year, fatalities due to speeding. So next slide, please. So then I mentioned what we didn't know whether 2020 was an aberration, and so far it looks like it was. So in 2021, you can see that our cumulative fatalities by month is compared to the range of the 5 previous years. In the early part of 2021, before the state reopened, it was below our usual range. And then when our state reopened on June 15th, the number has gone above the range in the last 5 years. So that's obviously a big concern for us. Next slide, please. So a little bit about our 2020 Vision Zero action plan. We have 6 priority action areas, which are to build robust data analytics tools, to form a Vision Zero task force, which was formed last year. And actually we have, tomorrow is the first Vision Zero task force meeting of the year. It's public. If anyone is interested in attending that, go to the website on the bottom left of our slide, visionsrosj.org, and you can find the registration information there. We work with the police department to strategize traffic enforcement around those issues that I listed before, which are the top leading to fatal and severe injuries. We're working on increasing community outreach and engagement. We're implementing quick build data-driven safety projects, meaning we're redesigning streets, but we're trying to do it quickly. And we're also prioritizing resources on the high fatality and severe injury corridors and districts in the city. Next slide. So just we'll have 2 last slides. One is just to show what quick build looks like. So this is our first project that's been delivered since the creation last year of our quick build group, which was created after we passed the 2020 action plan. And so this is the first project I did, Center Road. And you can see the type of road redesign, such as a buffered bike lane and curb extensions, and putting yellow around traffic lights or a parking protected buffered bike lane are among the things you can do in quick build. And also an outreach poster showing people about, information about a project that was going to happen. We also had an engagement process before that. Next slide, please. And finally, I just wanted to talk about our new pedestrian safety plan, which we're beginning. We got a grant from Caltrans called the Sustainable Transportation Planning Grant, and we co-applied with California Walks, who is a co-host on this event today, and will be leading inclusive community engagement to help us sort of better determine the focus areas in the 4 districts that this is in. Which are districts, it's focused on districts 3, 5, 6, and 7, which in San Jose terms are the districts that are in and immediately around downtown. And then we're also going to be doing multi-stakeholder safety placemaking strategies, basically things that apply to the whole city and can be used all around the city, but are, a little bit less geographically focused. So I believe that's my last slide. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Jesse. It's really cool to see all of the quick build projects that y'all have going on. And before the pandemic, I I got to see some of that in real life. So it's been really cool to see. Our next panelist is John Yi. He is the executive director of Los Angeles Walks. Prior to joining LA Walks in 2019, John was the advocacy director for the American Lung Association in California, where he worked on strong tobacco control and air quality policies. At the Lung Association, John also served as the lead organizer by training tobacco control coalitions throughout the state. He helped bring smoke-free ordinances to over a dozen different cities, fighting back against secondhand smoke and Big Tobacco's efforts to target low-income and communities of color. John also served as the interim national director for Parent Revolution, an education and social justice nonprofit. In his role, he led parent organizing campaigns in Texas, Oklahoma, Indiana, and Ohio. He received his master's degree at Georgetown University and his bachelor's degree at the University of Michigan. He's the brother of Phi Alpha Phi, speaks Korean and Russian, and loves to cook. Take it away, John.
Thank you. I think, hi everyone, my name is John again. I'm with Los Angeles Walks, and I think it's a pretty good segue actually from Jesse's presentation about crash victims. And so today I'm going to talk a little bit about our work, specifically about our organizing work with victims of traffic violence, specifically through our Families for Safe Streets program. So let us begin. Next slide, please. Let me put a timer on too. All right, so let's just set the base here, right? Why do we do what we do? I'm not going to go through each one of these, but in general, in Los Angeles, it's now actually every 30 hours an Angelino is killed. It used to be 36 before the pandemic, but we've lost another 6 hours just due to the way the streets are. The leading cause of death of our elementary and middle school children in LA are car crashes. And so the reason I like to share this is the work that we do is just beyond concrete and cement, right? It includes health, includes community, includes well-being. So next slide. So I like this. This is sort of our unofficial mission statement, but we believe that a walkable LA is a just LA, right? You can change all the streets you want, but again, it's not about concrete and cement, but it's about how communities live and navigate. So can we go to the next slide, please? And so before I begin, I want to share a little bit about our theory of change. You might be wondering, why is John sharing this? Is because how we do our work and our organizer really informs how we engage victims of traffic violence. So that's why I want to share this with you. So our theory of change is pretty simple at Los Angeles Walks. It's just 2 steps. The first step is we win safe street infrastructure. Sounds pretty basic, right? So we work with communities to navigate city systems on basic safe street infrastructure like curb ramps, speed humps, stop signs, bus shelters, things that are seemingly sound simple, but are incredibly difficult to secure, especially if you don't speak English, and if you don't have the social or political capital. We sort of provide that organizing support in navigating city systems. Next slide. And our second step in our theory of change is, as we do these local street campaigns, we leverage that experience to then build systems change. And what do I mean by that is we get our members appointed to different commissions. So for example, the picture you see here is the LA Pedestrian Advisory Committee, which you need to get an appointment from your city council member. Some of our members have run for neighborhood council. Some of our members have gotten contracts with city governments to do pedestrian work. And so that's how we feel like we can change systems, right? You can't just change the local streets, but you have to also change the larger system that produces some of these misdesigned streets. Next slide. So succinctly put, in a city like LA, Los Angeles Walks provides systems navigation support to secure personal and community resources. That's a wonky way of saying pretty much we provide access to safe street infrastructure for communities that would not be able to secure them. And one of those communities are very often the victims of traffic violence. And so this is how we engage our work with the community, especially when it comes to victims. And so next slide. So let me explain sort of one of our programs. As I mentioned earlier, we have a cohort of parents and families called Southern California Families for Safe Streets. It's about 14 families that are a part of our leadership. They include different family foundations. So these are primarily mothers who lost their children or their partners to traffic violence. And so for them, they wanted to organize, do something about it, and they created their own family foundations. And so we have a number of those in our groups. We meet regularly, we talk about policy issues, and we mobilize actions for change. We have a partnership with LA City called Rainbow Halos, where we put up memorials and to remind the city of its commitment to Vision Zero. And in general, this is sort of how we provide a service to our community members that are victims of traffic violence. And at this point, I want to make a distinction because there are your traditional active transportation advocates, those are folks you find on Twitter, and some of our members are on there as well. Those are the people who are show up for buses and all of that. But there are those who are actually victims of traffic violence. And from the organizing work that we've been doing as a body, as an organization, they are of a different class, I would say, just loosely, because these are family members who are not part of this movement because of a choice they made. They have been thrusted into this position, oftentimes into leadership positions to fight for safe streets, unwillingly because they lost someone or someone was killed that they know from traffic violence. And so it's often a very delicate balance as a community organizer, which is my background, in engaging families and populations like this. And so my hope is that for anyone out in this call that is working with victim families, I hope that some of the best practices that we've been using that I'll share with you in this presentation is helpful for you. Next slide. So this is what I call sort of the tip of the spear, right? When we engage someone for safe streets, this is the first thing, the piece of paper that I or our partners hand to them. And so this is what we call our resource guide. And so I'm going to go over just real briefly what is in this. Oh, thank you, SafeTruck, for adding that link in there. So please feel free to use it. It may differ based on jurisdictions, but I'll go into it. So the guide is pretty simple. It's got a lot of great resources. It has a step-by-step instructions on how to submit an insurance claim, how to navigate the legal system, the coroner's office. Next slide. We also have a list of different organizations, especially here locally in Los Angeles, that you can get involved with to either find more resources, to mobilize and organize with others, or just find a family or a network of people you can mourn with and grieve with. Because I'm not a victim of traffic violence. I feel blessed in that regard, but it is a very unique grief a lot of these families go through that many people do not understand. And a lot of us live our lives in major cities never experiencing. And so definitely there's oftentimes a lot of families get traumatized twice. First is from the actual crash. And the second is then undergoing and facing these legal systems, these law enforcement systems that often are very unaccommodating to families of traffic violence. And so our goal with this guide is to provide some sense of normalcy, some sense of like something you could grab onto and to be able to hold on to as you go through this experience. And so this, again, is what I call sort of the tip of our spear. Next slide. And so I just want to give you a few points of why and how we use this guide. Again, this is a guide for a life event where often many have no guidance on. A lot of our family members actually navigate themselves through these systems, and it's through their own personal experiences, their own best practices that they then share that with future victims and other victims. And so we're called Families for Safe Streets, and we have the word family in there for a reason. It's a family no one wants to be a part of, but we're all family no less. And so the guide and the personal support that our network provides is essential, especially when it comes to easing the pain of people who have gone through traffic violence. And so that's what I mean by my second point is we provide a network of professionals and legal experts. We make it very clear we can't provide legal advice. We're not there to provide any kind of direction on how to navigate in the court system, but we know people who have. We know people who have done it themselves. And so we can always point to different resources the families and victims can go to. And so that's another tool that's really effective when we use this to grow our movement. Next slide. And speaking of growing our movement, it's a balance as advocates we have to do as organizers. We want to make sure we provide our support to these families, but at the same time, we don't want to capitalize on their tragedy for our organizational growth. And I dare say, even for the growth of the movement, people enter into the space when they're ready and when they're comfortable. And so as an organizer, I think you have to be cognizant of that. I've actually had instances where families have pushed back on me saying they don't want to become advocates. They're not interested in becoming advocates. They're just there to find resources to get a funeral done for their family member and just to heal themselves. And so I think it's understanding that and navigating gingerly in that kind of space is super important. But a guide like this is what opens the door to activism, is how I'd like to say it. People won't work with you unless you provide some benefit to them. It has to be a give and take. And so while we do want to, use their stories, use their, passion to change streets, to change laws, we as organizers and advocates have to offer something back. And this guide is just a small token of something that we can offer back to these families. Again, this is what we call the tip of the spear when it comes to our underserved victim families. Next slide. And so I just want to give you a few examples of spaces where we have used this guide. As I mentioned earlier, we have a program with the city called Rainbow Halo where we put up memorials. And so this is one Rainbow Halo memorial that we put up. I'm sorry, I should have used a different picture, but if you look at the top of the screen, you'll see a little, like a small half of a disc with rainbow colors. That's the Rainbow Halo. And so we had a ceremony here for actually a brother-sister pair that was killed in a car crash. And our members came out, their family, their community came out to sort of recognize the tragedy that happened. But this is the space where we provide that guide, right? So not only for victims, but also family members of victims, just friends of the victims. Again, it's a resource for them to use and to navigate systems with. Next slide. We've also used the guide in non-program spaces of ours. This is a press conference that happened for Monique Munoz. She was killed in a crash earlier this year. And the family was pissed. They went and protested it at the courts, at City Hall, everywhere they could, just to make sure that Monique got her justice and her family got her justice. And so this was a press conference that we were there. And next slide. At the press conference, we had a table. And again, if you can see here an image of our flyer, but also the resource guide that we shared. And so again, this is something that we want to give back to the community because this is the first step that we have with them. And so this is sort of, again, at the tip of the spear in our work. And next slide. And I will just conclude with this, which is a quote that I love. It's by El Peatonito, who was one of our fellows, but he does a lot of pedestrian advocacy street performances in New Mexico, and he's been doing it throughout the world. But a quote he has is, "The pedestrian is nobody in the city. She or he has been forgotten by authorities and our own citizenry. The curious and paradoxical thing is that we are all pedestrians at some moment. As such, we have forgotten ourselves." Thank you.
Thank you so much, John. I think that's such an important point that you said, that the most directly impacted folks must be the ones to lead the way, but at the same time, we want to make sure that we're involving folks and engaging them in reciprocal ways. So thank you for sharing the work that y'all are doing. Our final panelist is my colleague. I'm very excited to introduce Teresa Do. Teresa is the Walk San Jose Programs Coordinator at California Walks. She graduated from UC Irvine with a BA in Public Health Policy and Political Science. Her honors thesis focused on the perceptions of physical activity of Vietnamese Americans in Orange County using a community-centered approach. In her free time, Teresa enjoys watching shows, arts and crafts, and spending time with her family and friends. Take it away, Teresa.
Thank you, Alma. Good morning, everyone. My name is Teresa, and I'm a program coordinator with California Walks under our Walk San Jose program. Next slide, please. So for today's presentation, I'll go over a little bit about Walk San Jose, our new post-crash resource guide, and then also what you can expect to see from us in the future. Next slide, please. So Walk San Jose is a project of California Walks that launched in 2017 to support CalWalks' vision to create safe and inclusive streets and public spaces in San Jose. For us, our goal is for San Jose to be a city where everyone can move in public spaces with confidence, dignity, and security. Next slide, please. So to achieve this vision of a walkable San Jose, we advocate for safe streets and public spaces in every aspect of our work. So that includes our advocacy work, partnerships with the local community, and then also celebrating walking and being active. Next slide, please. Since 2017, we have advocated for Complete Streets funding to make walking safer citywide, and we've also worked to build and strengthen transportation advocacy with local organizations. And the image on the slide is from our annual World Day of Remembrance event held in downtown San Jose. So this event is a memorial walk where we remember the lives of our neighbors, our family, and our friends who have lost their lives in traffic crashes and advocate for systems change so that it never happens again. Next slide, please. So through our education and engagement work, we partnered with the city and local organizations to collaborate on ways that we can make San Jose safer for people walking, biking, and also rolling. So before COVID-19, we met with seniors at the Vietnamese American Community Center, as you can see in the picture. And we really just talked to the seniors to learn about their experience walking in San Jose. And we've also worked with the city in the past to host a series of virtual pedestrian safety education workshops for older adults. Next slide, please. And lastly, we celebrate movement power, encouraging people to be active, to go on walks, and to celebrate their community. We really enjoy sharing different activities to do while walking, promoting local community events, and also highlighting walking stories on our social media channels as well. And we love being active in our communities. Before COVID, we joined a senior walking group at the Willow Glen Community Center to talk about about safety, the benefits of walking, and just getting to know other members in the community. Next slide, please. So in a 2020 poll that we conducted with EMC Research, we found that 1 in 3 San Jose residents know someone who was seriously injured or killed in a traffic collision. And 89% of residents are concerned with distracted driving in San Jose. Overall, residents surveyed are concerned about the safety of walking and biking in San Jose, and believe in increasing funding for street safety efforts in general, as well as supporting specific improvements like engineering solutions to make intersections, streets, and sidewalks safer. Next slide, please. But unfortunately, over the past decade or so, the number of people killed while walking in San Jose has doubled, and even more people face life-changing severe injuries. Each number that we see in this data set represents a person, their family, and their community. And if you're a survivor or someone who's lost a loved one in traffic violence, it can be a really incredibly traumatic, confusing, and frustrating experience. With traffic fatalities affecting so many people in our community each year, what resources are out there for survivors or afflicted families? Next slide, please. In our many conversations with families throughout San Jose who have lost a loved one in a traffic crash, we've heard countless times that there are very few resources offered to families and survivors on how to navigate this traumatic and devastating experience. For many of the families, they were left to figure things out on their own with little support. But in cities like San Francisco and Los Angeles, Walk SF and LA Walks have created resource guides that have helped survivors and those bereaved by road crashes identify like what are the next steps to take. Where can I find a legal advocate or mental health services in my city? Next slide, please. So these guides have both inspired and guided us to create our own resource guide. The post-crash resource guide provides San Jose specific resources for survivors of crashes and those who have also lost a loved one to a road crash as well. We know that surviving a traffic crash or experiencing the death of a loved one in a sudden traffic incident is immensely tragic. So we really hope that this guide can help guide families and survivors through a difficult time. Next slide, please. So in our 10-page guide, we compiled resources, including a pedestrian crash checklist. So this was based off of LA Walks' checklist, and it's a list of immediate next steps to take after a traffic crash. That's all listed in one page, as you can see on the slide. And we also have a short list of where to connect with other survivors and the loved ones of people who have been killed in traffic crashes. A compilation of the phone numbers and addresses of hospitals and support services available in San Jose, and then also legal and victim services that can provide guidance through the criminal and civil justice system. And lastly, a list of professional support services that provide grief counseling in San Jose, and then also other programs that are available nationwide. Next slide, please. So for our next steps for the guide, we plan to translate the guide into different languages, including Spanish and Vietnamese, to share with more people in the community. As Jesse said, San Jose is a very diverse community, and we would love to share our guide with as many people as possible. And we're also planning to distribute the guides to hospitals across San Jose, emergency rooms, in schools as well, and then also faith-based organizations and more. But for now, a permanent link to find the guide is available on our website. And I believe SafeTrack sent it in the chat box already. And this is available under additional resources. And lastly, we plan to regularly update the resource guide with more information and resources as we continue to find them that can help survivors and affected families. Next slide, please. So lastly, I just want to acknowledge everyone who's been a part of making this resource guide possible. So thank you to the California Focus Cities program and also the California Office of Traffic Safety that helps to fund this guide. And thank you to Gina LeBlanc, Jorge Quiros from the Families for Safe Streets in the Bay Area, and also the Lucille Packard Children's Hospital at Stanford Hospital. Next slide, please. So thank you again for your time. And please feel free to contact me if you have any comments about the guide, if you have resources that you'd like to share with us, or to even learn more about the Walk San Jose program. And thank you.
Thank you so much, Teresa. It's really cool to see how y'all were able to adopt the guide in San Jose and all of the people that supported in making it happen. So thank you so much for your work on that. We're now have some time for some questions. If folks want to start inputting some questions in the chat box, please feel free if you haven't already. I know there's some in there already, so I'll be going over some of those. So in an earlier question that we had by Bruce, he talked about it being great if we could see near miss data, since there are so many more of them, and making the data more stable. But there is an issue collecting this type of data, but there are databases like cyclistvideoevidence.com. Are there ways that we can implement the usage of more of this data, and how can we get Public Works to utilize this info? I don't know, Jesse, John, or Teresa, if any of y'all want to take that question on.
Sure. Near miss data is asked about a lot, and also in addition to being asked about a lot, it's also pitched to us by startups very, very often, and so we, I guess, are aware of the ways that we could do it, but none of the ways to do it are easy to adopt, might be the easy way to put it. There are two basic models. One model is that you put cameras above potentially everywhere, every single intersection, and those cameras would basically watch all interactions all the time. And as you might imagine, for any large city, even piloting it is a little bit complicated, because you have to pick a location, and then the infrastructure, all those cameras, all the stuff to connect them to each other, all the stuff to connect them to you, is a lot of infrastructure. And so even if you could create a system that used other cameras that may already exist in cities, that also seems like some companies are looking into that, but it's imperfect. A lot of those cameras are not very high resolution. So so basically there's that type of model. And then another model is around the idea that you could use people's cell phone signals or connected vehicles, but that type of data is not as detailed. And so those are like the two, I guess, main ways that the technology is developing at the moment. And then, from the standpoint of cities that are being pitched this all the time, it's better for us to ideally, work with maybe one company that wants to do it where they're not charging us hardly anything, ideally, and seeing whether it works. So we have done that with one company in 3 locations, and it is, basically, we have a lot of intersections in town. What's the likelihood that those 3 locations are going to be the locations that people are most interested in? And I mean, the answer to that is not very high. So, we are trying to see if we can use the data that come from those cameras but it's a whole new system of data to learn for our staff to learn. So it's not as easy as it sounds to just suggest that we should add that data type. Also, just at the end of the day, a lot of our reportable is, our deliverable, our goals is to lower traffic fatalities, and that is a already measured, already documented in a standardized way type of data. And so, like potentially the whole idea around the near miss sort of creates a different metric that you would, be using in the future that also doesn't seem standardized in the way it's used right now.
Thank you for that,
But,
Jesse. Oh, go
yes,
ahead.
I'll just to say that we're interested in the idea. Don't take that as saying that we're not going to look into it, but there are a lot of complications in the idea.
Yeah, thank you, Jesse. And I do want to share, as was stated in the chat right now, in a related note, that UC Berkeley SafeTrek does have a tool for people to share their traffic safety experiences, including near misses and unsafe areas, called Street Stories. Sorry. The link is within the chat, and if you would want more information, you can contact UC Berkeley SafeTrek. There was another, oh, go ahead.
I just want to add one quick comment, which is I made a mistake actually when I said I'm not a victim of a crash. I actually got hit twice on a bicycle, and my parents constantly remind me that I am also part of this group. And so I love the comment about those who are victims of injuries, especially serious injuries, because oftentimes their experience is drastically different from families who have lost a loved one. And so if we really want to create a movement, I think we also have to think about those who have been injured and how we can bring them into the fold in a way that we're really bringing into the fold families of victims. So that's a really great point.
Thank you, John. Yeah, that's where we're going to go to next, discussing that that piece. So thank you for bringing that up, because there are a lot of different experiences based on the things that you go through, and so it's important to be able to support folks in the ways that they best need. Chris also asked a question. He says, I appreciate the sensitivity to victims of crashes. Y'all talked about it some, but I always feel uncomfortable calling attention to victims without knowing who the victims are or connecting with their families or community. So can folks share a bit about how we can honor these folks without exploiting them or their families, even if our mission says we should advocate for these folks, because we don't always have, he doesn't feel like that always gives us enough permission either. John, I know this is something that you touched upon in your presentation, if you want to.
Yeah, we deal with this almost on a monthly basis, because when we do Rainbow Halos, we have to cold call families saying, are you interested in getting a memorial for your family? And I'll just say this, people have a very keen nose in smelling inauthenticity. I think anyone on this call can attest to that. You know when someone is being inauthentic. And so the way I say is this, it's very simple. Be honest and be straightforward and be humble when you approach a family. Let them know where you're coming from, what your objective is. Like if you have a campaign that's going on, if you have a bill that's happening and you want to get their story, or you have a memorial program like we do and you want to get them involved, just be honest with them, lay it all out, and just add that, we're here as a resource to you, right? This is what I was going back about. You got to provide something to them. You got to offer something first, if you want to be a partner. And so just say this, we are, and this is what I say, we're here for you. This is the program that's there. When you're ready, if you're ready, know that we're here for you. And so just be very honest about why you're approaching them, but give them that space to make that decision. I think that's another key point. So that's the advice that I would give.
And then I would just add on to John, for us, for Walks San Jose, we definitely try to be sensitive to that issue as well. And we only ask families to speak up if they feel comfortable with it as well. And for us, we really think it's important to not speak for families, especially about their experiences. That's definitely something that should be shared with their own words. For us at the World Day of Remembrance events, for the families that do want to speak about their loved ones, of course, we always ask them to share their own experiences. We would never speak about their experiences or their stories as well. And something that I forgot to mention is that for our post-crash resource guide, at the very beginning, we do share some of the stories that Gina and Jorge shared with us as well in their own written words.
I would also add, who is the messenger? Many times I might not be the best messenger. I'm not a parent. I haven't lost someone personally. Maybe when it comes to a victim, I could talk about my bike crash. But I always have our parents call other members or other new folks because they can connect on the stories on their level. There's a sense of protection that I think a lot of our victim parents have when they engage others versus that I, necessarily don't have. And so I think also making sure that the messenger is right is important.
Thank y'all for that. And yes, like making sure that there's explicit consent from the families, people first, bringing, humanizing folks first, and making sure that our relationships are reciprocal. Thank you all for that. Another question that we have is, have folks been successful in engaging law enforcement in developing and distributing post-crash resources?
I would say that that is a complicated question. We have been more successful in engaging law enforcement through the Vision Zero action plan. So if you are a city audience, like a city employee interested in doing a Vision Zero initiative or action plan, I think it is probably an avenue to working more with your police department. But it's challenging to get them to do some things like that. It's not to say they're against it. They might be able to do it. We might not have phrased the exact question that way. But we have, I believe, so for example, Teresa's working on this guide to be distributed in San Jose. As of yet, it is not printed, so we can't really distribute it yet. But when it is printed, it may be something that we could have the police distribute. I believe the other avenue that we've thought about for its distribution in terms of just having it be available in a place that a victim may be is the emergency room. But I'd be interested to hear more from LA Walks about the places that they distribute the information.
We actually work with the sheriff's, with LAPD on this. They have something in LA called the Victims Assistance Program, where they support crash victims with like funeral services, again, navigation support, and they actually use our guide, and they have printed copies where they've had distributed it. Actually, a lot of our Rainbow Halo references come from law enforcement saying that they have seen, such and such crash, and this is a family that needs support. And so that's another space where they give it to us. We've also in the past worked with hospitals where I think in emergency centers, we've also given out guides, because that's another place where a lot of our community members end up. So definitely, I think law enforcement does serve a role. Again, they're the tip of the spear, to use it again, when it comes to the carnage that happens on our streets.
Thank you. Teresa, is there anything that you want to add to that one?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, thank y'all. And another question that we have is, how can we get all pedestrian, bicyclist, and vulnerable travel crashes included as part of standardized safety data? For example, off-road paths are built as safety improvements, but safety data for off-road paths is not included in our basic transportation safety databases.
I can attempt an answer to that, which is that at least in San Jose, we do get all of that type of data collected by our police department. So, but there are always some weird data types that sort of escape, in a sense, through holes. One of the issues for us that may impact other California cities is that our transit authority, the VTA, they separately collect data that is related to their light rail, for example. So we've tried to get that data working with them, but it's been a complicated relationship. So that's a type of data that we didn't have for a very long time. But yeah, I think that having perfect data, particularly for non-motor vehicles, is a challenge, because that's one of the things that we were trying to work on when we created our Vision Zero task force. A lot of the pedestrian experience is not strictly on roads, And so we wanted to be able to work with our city and county partners through the task force in order to cover all aspects of the pedestrian and bike experience.
Thank you so much for that, Jesse. If folks have any additional questions, please feel free to have them to put them in the chat. Thank you also, Bruce, for sharing your story with us in the chat. And again, I think it's a reminder that, you know, as we talk about data and we're talking about the numbers, bringing it back to the stories as well, know of like how, like what folks are experiencing on the roads and what's needed to best support our community members when they go through these really life-changing situations. So thank you for sharing that, and hopefully you're able to find, or we're able to find and can continue to find that support that is needed. One of the questions that I wanted to ask folks from the panel, particularly John and Teresa, both of these guides are primarily focused in your respective communities, so LA and San Jose. What are some tips that you would give to an organization that's seeking to make a similar guide for their community?
My tip would be know who calls the shots in your city. I know that's very like obvious thing, but for example, in LA City, your city council member has a lot of influence over your street design, over how things are happening when it comes to traffic movement. And so if you're a victim, and if you want, especially if you're an organizer and you want to make sure victim crashes just don't happen in isolation, but lead to systems change, that's something that I wish I had more in our guide, to be honest, is to include a little more about how your crash can lead to a larger systems movement and systems change. But I think including that would be something I wish I did. So that's what I would recommend for anyone who creates their own guide. And also, I'm sure within your network, you have good friends that are lawyers. Speak with them. They know the system, they know how to navigate. There's probably especially a bike advocate lawyer. There's a handful of them that are super good here in LA. And so talk with them and pick through their brain.
I think for us, definitely something that I learned from making the guide is just really learning what different local organizations have to offer for services, and then also talking to community members, Families for Safe Streets members, and learning what resources they needed that weren't available when they were going through their traumatic life experience as well, because everyone has different perspectives and needs. So really trying to be inclusive and thinking of what resources people need from different points of views. Like what resources would a child who lost her friend in a traffic crash need? And then also thinking about the different places that the resource guides can be distributed at. Most people will think about hospitals or community centers, but then also at schools for children as well. And then also faith-based organizations. When we talked to some family members, we learned that they received counseling at their church or at the temple that really helps them. So really thinking out of the box of where can we distribute the guide widely as possible to really be able to share this guide with as many people.
Thank you all so much. And those are excellent points. And hopefully if folks are interested in doing those crash guides, folks can reach out to y'all in getting those together. We had someone ask another question. How can we make it easier for law enforcement to report pedestrian, bicyclist, and vulnerable travel crashes? For example, we need information on crashes that do not involve motor vehicles, but result from poor infrastructure.
I can attempt to answer here, which is that we receive the crash reports on the California standard form is called the triple nickel, the 555. There's a lot of variability because in my past work, I worked in New York City. There was a similar form, but a lot of the sort of details around how well the form is filled out may have something to do with the specific city's police department practices and a little bit less about the form. because the form is more or less standardized. So for example, the police officer who arrives on the site really gives a lot of details that are really hard to recreate if they don't put them in correctly. And they are quite often, we're looking at all of the data that they write into the form and sort of scratching our heads about where exactly the incident occurred on the in the location. And so, you know, we can, you know, seeing that, try to work with our local police department to try to get them to fill the form out in a more detailed way. So I don't know if that really answers exactly making it easier, but I do think that cities or also advocates could probably, you know, work with their local law enforcement to suggest that they, you know, fill it out in a way that's really clear. So I think that's probably something that may be a best practice among Vision Zero cities. I don't know to what extent Vision Zero cities have worked with their police department specifically on this issue, but it's a great idea.
Thank you for that, Jesse. Do folks have any final things that you would like to share before we wrap up?
Well, it was great to do this panel with both Los Angeles and California Walks, and great also to cover the breadth of sort of the city type work and also what advocates are doing, and specifically around Families for Safe Streets, which is a relatively newish thing in the, you know, across the nation. So it's great to hear the work that Los Angeles LA Walks is doing with Families for Safe Streets.
And you may have a local chapter in your area, so please, if you are a victim or happen or know someone of a crash victim, please join.
Great. Teresa, any final words?
No, but thank you so much, Jesse and John, for sharing your presentations with us today. I learned a lot. Jesse, I feel like I always learn something new about San Jose every time you speak, so thank you so much.
All right, well, thank you to all three of you and for everybody that jumped on. We're at the end of our session together. Thank you again, Jesse, John, and Teresa for your time and for sharing all the knowledge and your experiences, and for everybody that participated in the chat as well. I encourage everyone to take what you've learned today and apply it to your work, and make sure to share those resource guides and take a look at them a little more thoroughly. We will have these slides and the link of the recording available for you soon. And we'll be sending those by email, so keep a lookout for those. Thank you all so much for sharing part of your day. I hope you all have a great rest of your day. Thank you.